Hey, everyone, and welcome into the Reload podcast. Along with Nathan Gilsleider and Marshall Scott, I'm Justin Southwell, and we're back. We get to talk a little bit about what's been going on. The spring sports, baseball, softball seasons are over at this point, golf as well. So we'll recap all of that and then talk a little bit of football because we got some stuff going on with football. All right. So the biggest thing right now, I think, is baseball because there was maybe a little bit of a rough regional, if you want to call it that. Now, it could be worse. If you look at UCLA, Georgia Tech going into regional as some of the top ranked teams and not being able to get out, you could argue that would be worse. But the drought continues as far as getting to a super regional under Coach Josh Holliday. But baseball season ends in Tuscaloosa. Guys, initial thoughts just right off the bat.
They put themselves way behind the eight ball, losing that first game to USC Upstate. Obviously, a brutal loss. That whenever you lose that first game, pitching then becomes a bit of an issue because you've got to get through more games to continue on. And pitching was already, the depth of pitching and some of the injuries that the team has gone through this year. That's already been somewhat of an issue. I think it was admirable for them to fight back the way that they were. Even that last game against Alabama to go to 11 innings, knowing that you still need another win to keep fighting. I thought that was admirable. But yeah, it just that initial loss really set the tone of a not good time. But like I said, I like the way that they played after that. But it really got a little gross there at the beginning, and that it seemed to. I think that costed them in the end. I think there's a world where you're doing that, then now you're wondering, okay, which of these arms are more fresh? Can they take it to Alabama in one of these games? And then just didn't amount to be. And then we've sort of discussed this in the DMs, but all the bases loaded situations that guys just got left on is that's another tough pill to swallow. So yeah, a couple tough pills to swallow throughout the weekend. But like I said, I like the fight. Can't lose that first game to USC Upstate, and I think that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, in this format, when you lose the first game it is almost impossible. Like it truly is. But what they were able to do and fight back and get going, and losing Aiden Miola, I feel so bad for the kid. I mean, because anytime you hear anybody talk about him, anytime you watch him play, he seems to be such a great kid and just snake bitten. And Coach Holiday, I should say, don't know him firsthand, but Coach Holiday, just he never really has addressed injuries, but you could tell it really hit him hard when he was asked about it and what it meant. And it obviously wasn't Ethan Lund's finest outing, but you could see such a big hole that he left in the middle of that lineup, not being behind Colin Ritchie and not being there at third base. I mean, the kid's a phenomenal third baseman, and there are several plays in this regional that, by no stretch am I, saying Avery Ortiz didn't get it done, because he took him for the team and moved to a position he hasn't played in 2 years, and tried to get it done at third base and threw away a double play ball there and some other things that really came back to bite us. But you saw the kids fight, and they literally would not lay down, and guys going on short rest and back-to-back days or on third days. I mean, even Ethan Lund, like, for what he happened to him in the first game, to come back on one day's rest, to come back and completely dominate Alabama outside of one pitch. I mean, it was amazing stuff. This team needs to be commended for being able to get 39 wins out of injury laden, some really big ups and downs. But yeah, obviously disappointing. Oklahoma State not able to get out of another regional. This is by far the hardest format in all of playoffs. Like, it's incredible. I mean, you brought it up, right? Number 1 and number 2 seeds aren't even making it to the second round. Like, that's wild to think about. That would never happen in football. Would almost never happen in basketball. Like, how many years
Softball too, like
in
even softball.
You know what I mean? It's just all it takes is one bad weekend, and that happens all the time in baseball, right? It doesn't matter how good you are. So, yeah, it was tough. It's tough. Not making excuses for Coach Holiday, obviously, but not the standard that Oklahoma State baseball is set, but they fought the way that you would want your team to fight, and they hung on and they did everything they could. Just not enough.
Yeah, it's super like you feel super bad for Lund too, because he was sort of like the most consistent guy that they've had on the bump all year in terms of showed up every week, but for the most part, all the strikeouts that he had this year. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, that first game just didn't have it. And that's just a bad omen going to a weekend where you're already a little unsure of how pitching is going to go. And to have your guy who has been super consistent, not, have his best stuff that day. It just sort of felt doomed from the start. And then they still were tough to kill, but yeah.
And another big talking point that has come from this is obviously you've got the fans that are on Twitter who are ready to move on from Coach Holiday. Some people are just ready for the what's next. They don't necessarily think about who would be coming in or what that even looks like necessarily, but just any kind of change you would imagine would be good. However, there's been some more light brought onto this subject by what Bill Haston from the Tulsa World was able to share as far as the resource allocation gap in baseball. Now, Marshall, I want to save a little bit for O State Daily as well, because Casey was able to maybe dive into that a little bit more and provide even further detail and clarity into that situation. But with even Bill Haston's article in mind, kind of give us a rundown as far as what your takeaways were from that.
Yeah, really good stuff from Bill. This is like a classic Bill story where it's like, of course, Bill, found all this information, but in the tweet itself, it mentioned how, scholarships have gone up in terms of, some of these sports that they have more access to scholarships now. But Oklahoma State is using 13. Arizona State, for example, had 34 scholarships. So, obviously a big gap there. And then they just sort of Bill sort of mentioned some of the financial aspects of the NIL revenue shares sort of stuff. And he mentioned that Oklahoma State was spending about $400,000 on baseball. And he said, Bill wrote that their SEC programs with roster revenue amounting to at least $4 million. So, just a nice 10x of what Oklahoma State's got there. And, we talk about, how OSU to the core Josh is, and he's not going to make excuses for any of this. There was a brilliant quote that I thought was just like the most Josh Holiday quote ever in there. Whenever it mentioned sort of the resource gap, Josh said to Bill, he said, I'm always going to be grateful for everything we have, but if we're looking for facts for reporting the news, those are the facts. So, as he didn't want to use it as an excuse. He just said, yeah, well, yes, these, I imagine Bill brought him some numbers, and Josh was like, yeah, that's about right. So, I think that shines a little bit more light on it. Obviously, I think this stinks for, Oklahoma State. 5 years ago, it was so cool that Oklahoma State was like competitive in everything. And now with this revenue sharing model that, it really sort of forces you to pick, okay, what sports do you want to go all in on? And, I'm not going to slander Chad Weiberg on here either, because it's like, what do you want Chad to do to, just come up with more money? And I get that that's part of his job, but it's just like, I think there's so many aspects of that it's essentially a salary cap. What I would like to see is, I think different sports, every sport should have its own salary cap, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think that you should have, it's like 25 million or whatever. I don't think 25 million should be split between all your sports. I think you should have like a, whatever it is for football, say it's a $15 million cap for football. I think everybody should have that football aspect. And then that, everybody's got the same amount for every sport. And that still is going to be tough on teams who, on schools who have more sports than other, schools and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's sort of where I came away from all this sort of thinking, is like, man, that sucks that, the revenue sharing model of this, and you've got to divvy your 25 million or whatever, under your own circumstance. A lot of that's going to go to football. Oklahoma State's got a rock and wrestling program right now that's, making money as well. So, money's got to go there. Basketball is obviously a big deal for every school, no matter what. Oklahoma State's really good at softball. You're going to take money from Kenny G to put towards baseball, and it just sort of, it goes on and on. So yeah, I think what I came away from this wanting more was, I want every sport to have its own cap structure. I think that would just be the most fair, and it takes away that aspect of schools sort of having to play favorites to a certain extent. Because like I said, that used to be the thing at Oklahoma State is, oh yeah, OU only cares about football and softball, and they can go care about that, but we care about wrestling and basketball and football and everything, so I just don't really like how this model has made schools pick. I think is what the gist of my point comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned O State Daily a little bit earlier, and Nathan, big fans of this guy who's got some in-depth baseball knowledge as well as great sources. And he was able to kind of share some light based on a very trusted source who provided some information on the numbers. So we might have to link that tweet there, but You mentioned at Marshall, OSU had 13 scholarships and $400,000 in cash. Not anywhere close to the, I guess, which would be the cap of 34 scholarships. And then obviously the numbers for the cash can just go.
Yeah, I think got to figure out the scholarship thing.
Like, that's crazy. Yeah.
Can't go into next year with 13, I don't think.
Definitely. But with the Big 12 baseball itself, I feel like maybe this year was obviously not the strongest conference. So luckily OSU was able to hang on with what they had, but I don't necessarily think that it's sustainable moving forward. And it's maybe pretty similar to the way that things were working with Coach Gundy and the way that maybe he wasn't going out and fundraising the way that he should. Do you see that? Are you interpreting it that way, Nathan, or is there another way to look at this?
I have never heard anything close to what you would hear coming out of the lack of fundraising side from Coach Gundy and Coach Holiday, right? I know that Coach, from my understanding, this could be wrong, right? I know Coach Holiday was not the biggest fan of NIL, right? Like you go to here, you get, your degree, and you come here and you develop and you do what you're supposed to do, and that'll, in terms, pay off in the long run. And he's not alone in that, right? I mean, a lot of these coaches are, talking out both sides of their mouth. I want everybody to get paid, and then you know what I mean. Like, regardless of what you have to say, most of them are not fans of it. There's reasons why it's extremely difficult to build rosters, extremely difficult to have continuity, and to have kids push through difficult things because they can just tap out, and go to somewhere else. So it's really difficult. But I mean, I think before we get any further, there's a few things like you want to put in perspective, right? And you brought up the numbers for Oklahoma State. Let's just be honest. There's a clear line between the Big 12 and the SEC in just about every sport financially. None bigger than in college baseball. And if you look at the top 25 recruiting rankings, they are in like almost every single SEC schools in the top 20. Like, it's outrageous, and it's because of the fund. So let's not even compare Oklahoma State funding to the SEC, because that's not fair. Let's compare to our conference, the Big 12, that every Twitter tough guy gets upset when you lose a conference, weekend, or you can't beat UCF or whatever it may be, right? UCF, 34 full scholarships. Arizona, 24 full scholarships. Utah, BYU, between 15 to 18 plus rev share. Cincinnati, unconfirmed, rumored 34 scholarships. West Virginia, this year had 11.7, but then they also had another 1.5 in rev share and NIL to go on top of that, and expanding to 25 to 20 to 25 next year. KU, 25 fulls and 500K in rev share. Like TCU, around 25. Texas Tech, all 34. Even in our own conference, we're not competing at the top. So let's just get that right out the gate, right? Coach Holiday is never going to say, that's why we didn't get jobs done. He's never going to say it. But I'll say it for him. It ain't fair. Like, you guys keep complaining and you're like, well, we have a nice stadium. And guess what? If you're not giving everybody a full scholarship like these other schools are, I don't care if you're playing at Yankee Stadium. It's not enough. And if you take this into account, the recruiting and the development that he's been able to do since NIL has been open, it's pretty freaking amazing. Like, it's pretty awesome. Let's just be real. Like, yes, everyone wants to complain because, he hasn't gotten in before Rev, right? We had a couple issues and things like that. And, he's had some good teams that didn't get out. That's fair criticism. But if we're talking about what have you done for me lately, and people are saying he needs to lose his job because you didn't get out of a regional at Alabama, it's apples and oranges with what you're doing. And when you watch that game, there was not a talent gap between Oklahoma State and Alabama. Those were two very evenly matched baseball teams, and they lost. But it wasn't because, oh my gosh, like Alabama, that's got 5 first-round draft picks on it, and our guys, you know what I mean? Like, that was not that. It was not the Oklahoma State football team versus Oregon feel that you had, right? And so my takeaway from it all was just like a dose of reality for Oklahoma State fans, for the people that love to hate on Coach Holiday. And listen, if you want to have the conversation, and there's some fair ones to be had about our approach at the plate overall. This team strikes out and has struck out way too much in the last handful of seasons. And with the launch pad being of O'Brate that we have, you can win a lot of games at O'Brate by striking out a lot, as if you can run into 2 or 3-run bombs, right? And we've got a lot of big time hitters. But if you take us out of O'Brate against some pitching staffs that we're not that familiar with, I mean, we probably had 7 balls this past weekend that went to the fence. And those are out at O'Brate. It's just reality. So, yeah, you can tell me we need to change approach. Completely agree. Pitching staff walks entirely too many people. Like, it's really on some uncompetitive pitches.
Some of that was brutal at the end, and those end of those regional games. Boy, that was brutal.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know. I'm not trying to pick on Mario Pesca, because I think he obviously is throwing the pitches that the coach is calling. The South Alabama game that, he gave up the 3 runs and then kept pushing the limit every single inning. They kept throwing slider. He's got 95 miles an hour arm side run, and you're not calling it, and he can't locate the slider. Like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? These are fair questions. And actually, I think if you ask Coach Holliday, he even would say, hey, yeah, those are fair. You want to talk about approach, you want to talk about some things, but we have to have a dose of reality. If you want this baseball team to grow and get better, we have to do a better job as a fan base. We have to show up. We have to support. People have to give money and earmark it towards baseball. Otherwise, everything is going towards football right now. And as it should, right? From a university standpoint, that's what runs the university. And basketball is secondary. And we've been bad at both for the last handful of years. So you've got to go all in on those two. And so baseball is kind of left out, because you brought up wrestling. They're fully funded on their own. They don't need university, right? That's all people that earmark it towards wrestling. Heck, our biggest donor didn't even go to university. So, that's something you can't compare to. Same thing with OSU golf. You got people giving out their private jets and stuff like that so they can go play at Hawaii. You can't compare the two. So
essentially made Carson private, just sort of for the golf team to a certain extent.
That's exactly right? Coach Holder doesn't even allow cameras in there when the two teams are playing each other. I came away from this information. I was already leaning on the, hey, leave Coach Holliday alone. But now I'm definitely you guys can go kick rocks, because what he's doing and what he's done is impressive. You know what? Should they have gotten out several more times? Absolutely. They should have. Had the talent to do it. You can blame Coach Rob Walton if you want to. You can blame Coach Holliday, whatever. But there's also a dose of reality that he's doing a phenomenal job with what he's got versus what he's going against. And it's not even the top of the mountain. That's middle of the pack, college baseball. So
yeah, and I want to point out, like you mentioned, the talent gap between Alabama and Oklahoma State. Not very much. We've got kind of a 1-game sample size, I guess, but it's what we've got. They're the number 7th ranked team, something like that. We were kind of creeping up in the top 25 toward the end of the season before we dropped that unexpected game to Arizona. So you could probably make the case that we would be hovering somewhere between 25 to 30 realistically. And the fact that we have been able to do that with 13 scholarships, $400,000. I'm not saying that that's not impressive, but it's obviously not sustainable. It's not enough. How much of that is on the fan base versus on Coach Holliday to go out and do the fundraising and continue to do that? Or is it that there's this perception out there that he's kind of like, Coach Gundy's set in his ways and we're not going to donate to football or baseball in this case, because what we're seeing on the field isn't translating to what we'd like to see as far as conference championships, super regionals, getting to Omaha in the same way that it would be for football as far as Big 12 championships.
Yeah, conference championships haven't been an issue for Josh over recent years. I'm pulling it up right now. Won the tournament in 24, won the regular season in 23, won the tournament in 19, won the tournament in 17, won the regular season in 14. That's all under Josh. So he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ones. Yeah, I've never been in, and I totally understand. Whenever it was like early in the season and the fan base was sort of freaking out, I didn't really understand that. As it sort of grew on, I was like, okay, I get what they're saying, but I still, because I was at the conference tournament in 17 and 19. 24 I wasn't, because they moved it to Arlington for some godforsaken reasons, so they could play in an empty stadium. But yeah, those social tournaments I was there, and I was like, this team it's catching fire at the right time. I think whenever he finally does get out of a regional again, it's going to be like that. Remember when Ricky hit that putt to win that tournament, and it'd been a really long time, and you could almost see like after it went in, you could just like sort of see it exercising through him. I think that's how it's going to be for Josh in the dugout. I think it's going to come. We mentioned all the, this is sort of like the best time right now to be an Oklahoma State fans in terms of the MLB in some time, particularly a Mets fan. If you're a Mets fan, you got Nolan McLean, you've got Carson Bench out there. So I think it's just, I still think there's a lot of good happening in the program right now. And I'm way out on that. I'm way out on making a move on Josh. And something else that I think needs to be shouted out: Colin Ritchie finished the season with 31 home runs. 2 Cowboys have ever done that. Him and Pete Incaviglia that's it. That's where the list stops of Cowboys who have hit that many home runs in a season. So I think there's still a lot of good going on in the program. It's disappointing to not make a regional again, but even not even given all this financial context, I was still so far removed from ready to make a move from Josh. And then given this financial context, it's like, okay, if you make a move now, then it's just sort of silly, because he's doing more with less.
Yeah, and can we stop like comparing to Gary Ward era baseball? It's a completely different sport. It's not even close. Okay. They didn't even have super regionals. They didn't have the same formats. They had dropped 9 bats. Like, let's just stop, okay? They didn't have 18-year-old freshmen coming out of the bullpen throwing 95. Okay, like, this is not the same sport. This is not Big 8 baseball. Guess how many national champs Gary Ward won? 0. Okay? So stop acting like we have this national championship lineage. We were very, very good. Probably the most dominant baseball team during that time, and we didn't get it done. Okay, so let's go out on that. If you want to compare to Mike Gundy and say this is the same thing, we're going to do it all over again, that's fine. But you brought up a couple things. But here, I'll go through a little bit more of his resume in 13 seasons. Okay, 2016 Midwest Regional Coach of the Year, 2014 Big 12 Coach of the Year, 13 regional appearances, 3 super regionals, 2016 College World Series. You brought up the 5 Big 12 Conference championships and or tournament championships. He's finished in the top 2 of the Big 12 8 times of those 13. 2 top 10 finishes in the final national poll, despite not getting to supers. They're still ranked that high. 77 draft picks, 37 of those being in the top 10 rounds. You can go on and on and on. Okay. So if we're comparing apples to apples here, like, that's more than Mike Gundy did. I didn't realize they're not the same sport, right? It's much more difficult in football in certain ways and things of that nature. But he is a very, very, about as consistent a winner outside of golf and wrestling at our university. And nobody loves it more than him. So I'm out on these people like Josh needs to go, yada, yada. Does he understand that, we've not gone in a while? I think nobody understands more than Josh Holiday that we have not gotten to a super regional or the College World Series in a long time. He also understands how freaking difficult it is to do that. We hold the second longest streak of regional appearances in the nation. Vanderbilt, a powerhouse, has won multiple national championships. They didn't make it this year. The same coach that did all of that with, multiples of our income and money. So I don't think it's fair to say he needs to go. I do think it's fair to say we need to maybe look at our approach, what we're doing. Do we need to get a hitting coach? Do we need to change philosophy? Do we need to recruit differently?
The hitting coach aspect of it sort of sounds like, because you remember that time where special teams was getting really funky with Oklahoma State, and everybody's just like shaking Mike Gundy, like, just hire a special teams coordinator, just please, dear God. That sort of feels that feels like the hitting coach right now.
I agree, but if we're talking about not being funded fully, it also means not having fully funded coaching positions.
Would rather have a shortstop than a hitting coach, I guess.
You know what I mean? And so that, when you had Robin Ventura and his brother as assistant free hitting coaches, yeah, that's nice. But guess what? They're not going to do free forever. And they're not there anymore. And Josh is a great hitting coach. But if you want to say they strike out way too much, completely agree. It's infuriating to watch this baseball team sometimes when they're not on. They strike out. They don't put things in play. You don't play the cleanest form of baseball. But complete outside of him saying, I don't want to do this anymore, or him saying, I'm not going to change, you're going to have to fire me, it's not happening, and nor should it. Like, we have got to do a better job, in my opinion.
There's always that boomer bust aspect of it, right? If you want to be national champs one year and then not make it one year, would you rather that be the case, or would you rather have consistent regional appearances with the chance at winning a national championship every single year? But and then the other thing I was thinking about was, as you guys were talking, I wonder if it makes sense to get a general manager in for the baseball program like we've got for football. Raj 2.0 for baseball. 2.0, I don't know. That's tough on Raj, right? He's gonna, but Raj Jr. So general manager, baseball, salary caps. There's all kinds of stuff that we can model after the MLB in the same way that college football seems to be shifting toward the NFL model.
Another team to shout out here. LSU started the year ranked second nationally, finished the year 2 games above 500 and did not make the NCAA tournament. So whenever Nathan was talking about the streak earlier that Oklahoma State is on, that's the, that's the type of stuff that, you mentioned Vanderbilt. LSU didn't even make the tournament this year. They went 30-28. So,
well, we were kind of looking at maybe not making the tournament ourselves. And there were injuries and battling through that. And it makes it tougher whenever you only have 13 scholarships. And then, you don't have the depth that you would necessarily have for some of these other programs. LSU, I don't know what their excuse was, but I'm not an LSU baseball fan, so I don't really care. I don't know. Any other parting thoughts on baseball before we move on to another spring sport?
I think it's just my overall just like disdain for every time they lost a baseball game. Like, Twitter world was out and was like, these guys terrible fire, and it's like, it's a Tuesday night, whatever, or they lose. Yes, because hey, maybe Kansas is pretty freaking good, and they are pretty freaking good. You know what I mean? Like, and we lost that series, and they were like, who loses to Kansas? And well, they're pretty good at baseball. So I wish the haters would just give it a rest, because it's got to be exhausting after every single game. Like, baseball's a game of failure. It's a game of, hey, it doesn't go your way today. You put your cleats back on tomorrow and get it back after it, right? And so it's just exhausting, quite frankly. And it was getting difficult to stay on Twitter at times, because it's just like, come on, man. And it's hard to enjoy. It's hard to enjoy what those kids are giving and putting out there every single day. And then you see the heartbreak when they lose the game in the way that they did, and everything that they put into it. And it's just like, man, they care so much. As you guys know, they really do. Like, just support them and stop worrying about it. I don't know what else to say, because they're not going to ever be appeased. But, Coach Holiday knows more than anybody, getting there's not the standard. But I don't think, and I don't even know who you see this all the time in the NFL, and it's like, you fire just to fire. And then it's like, well, who's coming in that's better?
Totally. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, you're going to hold them to a different standard, or whatever standard you want to say at Oklahoma State. So it's like, who you bringing in here that's going to say, hey, here's 13 and a half scholarships. Have fun. $400,000. Go win the Big 12, or you're gone in 3 years. Who's doing that? Nobody's leaving their SEC job to come do that.
No doubt. All right, we got to talk about golf. Another one of those teams that seems to always be in the mix. This time they finished third, lost to Auburn in the semis, unfortunately. But we did get an individual national champion out of Preston Stout. Marshall, what can you tell us about how the golf team performed as they rounded out the year?
Yeah, sort of a disappointing final match against Auburn, just because Auburn jumped out pretty early. So they were like leading every group pretty early, and then they just sort of like they were like 2 up basically the whole time. So that was a little not fun. But the fact that Preston Stout goes out and wins a national title, the kid's really good at golf. It seems. I'm not the biggest golf guy, but the fact that he's a junior and he's won 3 Big 12 titles and he has now won a national title. Super impressive. He got matched up against the Haskins Award, the 2-time Haskins Award winner now from Auburn. I can't say his last name, starts with a K. So yeah, yeah, sure. I think a top 4 finish, coming off, winning a national championship last year, the fact that they, won the Big 12 again, that they had the Big 12 individual champ, they had the NCAA individual champ. I think it's another, really solid year for golf. It'd have been cool to see them pull through and go back to back. It would have been, they just had that. Well, I think that match against the 2018 team was filmed pretty far in advance of when it actually aired, but the Golf Channel put that out. If you haven't seen it yet, I've heard it's like 2 hours long. But that 2018 team, they won that year, and then they dominated the stroke play portion next year, and they just weren't able to win in match play. So I just think that sort of happens. But yeah, Preston Stout, he joined Matthew Wolf, Jonathan Moore, Charles Howell, EJ Pfister, Brian Watts, Scott Verplank, David Edwards, Greer Jones, and Earl Moeller as individual national champions to play at Oklahoma State. So big time deal for him. Continues to just look really good. Not sure if I don't know, like the golf etiquette is he likely going pro at this point? I honestly have no idea, but really cool weekend regardless for Oklahoma State golf.
Yeah, I would imagine. Well, first of all, winning the national championship, he gets into the U.S. Open and the Masters next year, so that's pretty awesome. And usually that, they'll kickstart going pro, and I would imagine he would do that. I don't know how much or why he would come back at this point to Oklahoma State. And regardless, if he doesn't, I mean, obviously he's phenomenal, but 4 of the 5 starters will be back again next year, and it will be played at the same location next year. And Auburn was the best golf team all season. For as good as Oklahoma State was last year, they didn't play quite as well throughout the year during the regular season. And Auburn has really, I mean, they wired to wired this thing. They're phenomenal, and it was the matchup everybody wanted to see. I think everybody just hoped they would see it in the finals and not in the semis. And to your point, like Auburn just jumped out so fast, and the boys just didn't play very well. For just being honest, they just didn't have it. Especially Stout. Stout was down 3-0 after 3 holes. It's not ideal to start against the number 1 AM in the world that just won the Haskins Award, right? The Heisman for golf. So it's pretty awesome when you're disappointed with a 3rd place finish in a national tournament. Like that's where golf is at, and so that's fun. But it's enjoyable to watch. It's enjoyable to see the brand put at that level in the Golf Channel and the way that they're talking about, our guys and whatnot. So yeah, it was fun to watch. Still a little bit disappointing, but it's fun to watch.
Yeah, honestly, shouts to Auburn. So they ended up winning a national championship. They're only 2 teams have ever won the stroke play portion and the match play portion. That 2018 Oklahoma State team, and now Auburn. So that's sort of we mentioned how hard it is to get out of a regional. Winning that match play bracket can get pretty dicey. Remember, mentioned that 2019 Oklahoma State team like lapped the field in stroke play, and then I think it was Texas that ended up getting them in match play. So that's a tough format as well. But credit to Auburn for doing the whole thing.
Well, I mean, UCLA is in the national championship. Well, they probably just finished, but they only got into the match play because of a playoff. You know what I mean? Like, and that's all you gotta do is get in, and then a couple guys get hot, a couple guys don't play well, and all of a sudden you're in the national championship for the first time in school history. So kudos to them. But that's exactly the point, Marshall. It's match play is very fickle, and you guys can thank Coach Holder for that, because Coach Holder put match play as part of our tournament because he thought it'd be better for TV, and he's right. But it also probably cost Oklahoma State another 5 national championships. So it is what it is.
Just get better at match play, guys. Golly, it's not hard. Come on. Say that to Team USA and the Ryder Cup. I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, so the only other thing that I noticed was an unfortunate parallel between Oklahoma State last year wins a national championship, finished 3rd this year. Kind of mirrors the Thunder. Last year they won the NBA championship. This year they're going to finish 3rd, if you wanted to say 3rd. I digress. We don't need to talk about that.
I would say third. I think they could take the Cavs. I think that they could take those sorry Cavaliers with James Harden.
Goodness.
I'm
right.
almost mad now.
You're right. But we do have to talk about real quickly. We've got a couple more sports because it's just a crazy time of year, and we were off for a couple weeks. So yeah,
we went 30 minutes on baseball as well.
Yeah, of course. But football and basketball are both reporting this week. Basketball first, because they just added UCF transfer Jordan Burks. Marshall, what can you tell us about this guy?
Yeah, I had my story pulled up on him because it's honestly been a while since, not to toot on, but this is something that we've talked about in the forum for sort of a month or so now. I think I mentioned to you guys whenever, I think it was when Pogai committed and Let's send out the bat symbol. I was like, oh, it's Jordan Burks from UCF. And then it was like 3 weeks later, he finally actually committed. But yeah, it's a, 6'9". I think he shot 37% from three this past year. And didn't have a good game against Oklahoma State. I think he went like close to over, if not over. So I think that's sort of just a funny anecdote there. But as a guy that stayed in the NBA process for honestly a while, but before hopping back out. So yeah, I think they've got one scholarship left still, but I think this team, and I think we say this every year, and especially I say this every year, but this really does look like it's going to be a good team. They've got defense, they've got length, they've got shooting. I think this is coming together to definitely be Lutz's best team. So yeah, I think it's solid. You mentioned the guys are on campus. There's been a lot of talk about cashing at and sort of his waiver. I haven't heard any more on his waiver, but the fact that he's in Stillwater, I think probably bodes well for that aspect. He, if you don't follow him on Instagram, he basically, whenever he wasn't in Stillwater, he would just like take a picture of a hill and put it on his story, and he was just like running up and down that hill. Hill runs, I'm sure you guys have gone through a time or two. It takes a dog to just go out and do hill runs, by himself because of that. And then also, I believe he doesn't run with a weighted vest. He runs with weights in his backpack. So Falesi, the freshman, who I think is going to be a similar style player to Cashew Nat. So I was really excited to see this. So he posted like, we're working or something like that. And it was a picture of him running behind Cashew Nat, and Cashew had his backpack on. And so I was like, yes, Falesi, just get in Cashew Nat's pocket and stay there all year and then become Cashew Nat. So yeah, I'm excited for basketball. When am I not excited for basketball? Especially in June. We're going to talk to Steve Lutz next week. So, look for some quotes to come out of that.
It seems to be a much more well-rounded roster. Like off and on, we've talked about it. And it's like, what's the one thing that they've needed for a while? It's like, if they could find one more like 3-and-D wing, guy and got some length to him. And it's like, you told me to expect, this guy coming, and then we all got nervous because this is how this process works. But I'm excited. I'm going to hold a little bit of reservation just because I can't get hurt again. But this is a tournament level team, and that's just what it is. We've got 3 levels now. It appears, and just from purely recruiting purposes, that they should be a big upgrade on the defensive end, especially on ball defending, athleticism. So I'm really excited. Going to be cautiously optimistic. But like we talked about, they're reporting right now, and it's never been more important than in this day and age that they get there and they put this work in together and actually build a team. Because how many of these guys are new? How many of these guys have never been to the state of Oklahoma before? It appeared that Coach Lutz maybe kind of got away from what got him to this point, like the style and the way that team was constructed. It didn't really feel like a Coach Lutz team. This definitely feels much closer to that on paper. Also, Cashew Nat, they gave him a number. They put him on the website and everything. So I feel pretty good about it, but you never know.
Do you guys have any number takes?
Well, yeah, 99 is a crazy number for
a lot of doubles. There's a 99, a 44, and a 22 or 33 or something like that.
There's 91, I think.
A lot of single digits, and then basically everybody in the uppers was like, you know what, just give me a number twice. So
hey, I kind of respect going for 2, like Cade Cunningham territory. Like, hey, just give me the 2. Let's go do this thing. So I kind of like it.
How do you feel as a referee trying to say foul on number 99? That's a lot. That's a lot of numbers right there. The other thing that I wanted to point out was he's been at a number of schools. So he started at Kentucky, then at Georgetown. We just mentioned UCF, and now Oklahoma State. Anthony Roy also went bouncing around from different schools. where just the one number 9, but now we've got a double 9 for Jordan Burks. Does that give you any cause for concern? Like he's just bouncing around from one school to another? Is he a mercenary type of guy, or how do you feel? How do you interpret that?
Who's not a mercenary in the current climate, especially in college basketball? I feel like it's just like everybody just redoes their thing every year. So yeah, I got no reservations anymore about, oh, this guy's been on so many teams. So I'm cool with it.
Yeah, well, I guess that makes sense. The narrative is gone. It is what it is now. So, and then last but not least, football. We're up to 4 recruits with the addition of Arizona tight end Taylon Scott. Marshall, any chance you guys are related?
Not to my knowledge, but I am wearing my Camelback hat. So
Okay.
He's from Arizona. I've been to Arizona, so I don't know. You tell me. Do I look like a tight end to you guys?
I would imagine both of your families are from Scotland, from back in the day, maybe.
Yeah, I took a 23andMe, and it was like mainly England, and I was like, wait a second, this isn't matching up right.
It's close enough.
I think I was also like 0.01 Nigerian, by the way.
Nice. There you go.
I could see that.
I'm trying to remember because I've written so many recruiting things over the past couple of weeks because it's really all that's going on. But I believe it was somebody that they sort of identified. Drew Svoboda sort of identified. He offered in March, and then in April, Scott tweeted that he was going to be on an official in June. But then he moved that official up to the end of May, and then committed. So it seemed like a guy that Svoboda identified, and then was like, I want this guy. And they did what they had to do to get him. So I think it was really, I think it's probably a good move. He's the 4th guy right now. It's sort of a slow start, but this is something that Morris sort of mentioned. He was like, after, the chaos of the portal, he was like, hey, just so you guys know, like, I feel like we're a little behind on 2027. And I think, that's more than fine given, the fact that he just got here and then had to put together find 80 people to fill out his current roster. So they've got Carson White, the quarterback from Texas, Cooper Hooker, the wide receiver from Pryor, and then Bryson Brown, the defensive back from Broken Arrow. So, I think it's a strong start. Basically, everybody that Morse recruits plays multiple sports in high school, and it's like it's not like a football player who like also sort of plays, the other sport on the side. It's like almost like their identity is like, oh yeah, I'm a football player and a track runner, or I'm a football player and I play basketball. So, or Carson White, he's a football player and a baseball player. So, I think that's been certainly an interesting aspect of this. I'm not. Like I said, it's way too early for me to get caught up in the rankings and stuff like that.
You kind of have to worry about that moving forward. I feel like you can jump in the transfer portal in the spring because you're going for track now. We've seen that happen. So tread lightly. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe Carson White, because Carson White, I think, is going to play baseball as well. So I imagine that was a pretty big boom for.
Name's Carson, so it makes sense.
For Josh Holiday. And also Carson White, this sort of, I think, went under the radar. Posted on his Instagram a week ago at this point, and it made me a little bit nervous, but he mentioned that Georgia had offered, and I don't know that it specified football or basketball, but that's the type of quarterback that, whenever he committed, I think I saw some like, oh, it's just like a 3-star guy, but like that's sort of the, if Georgia's interested, then maybe let's poke up our eyebrows a little bit. So yeah, I'm really excited for Carson White and what he's going to turn into.
Yeah, and I think I would listen. We've got to show it on the field a little bit for recruiting to kind of really start picking up, right? We're not going to be out. One of the things that Oklahoma State's going to have to do, and we all know this, is you're going to have to find a little bit of bargain bin shopping with NIL. And some of that's going to come from, you got to show it on the field a little bit to be like, hey, come here, you produce, may not be the top dollar, but you're going to come here and you're going to light it up. So we got to start showing some of that. But it's a good, you start looking at some of these guys' offers lists, right? In the tight end, he had a good offer list. And if the wide receiver Hooker was at Jinx or Union or somewhere else, his offer list would be a whole lot different. This kid he is very good. He's very fast. He's very quick. He's very shifty. It's just, he's in Salina and he's not in Tulsa. And that's basically the difference between what he's going through. So Oklahoma State was very fortunate to get him. I think he's going to be great, but yeah, we'll see. It's just the beginning. They are a little bit behind, but we do have the portal. So we'll see.
And I'm sure as these guys are reporting, we're going to start to hear and see more stories. Big 12 Media Days coming up, so stay tuned for all of that. We are running a little bit low on time, so Marshall, we're going to do something maybe a little bit different this week. Let's call it Marshall's Wrestling Minute. I'm going to put you on a timer, and you give us a rundown over this next minute for wrestling.
Are you able to mute me? Do you have that power?
Yeah, I think I do.
Okay. Right at a minute. I want to be cut off.
All right. When you're ready.
Okay. So just jumping back to like I guess the U.S. Open. Landon Robidoux won the U20 U.S. Open. The U20 World Team Trials were this past weekend. He beat Melvin Miller, the top prospect in the 2027 class. He's headed to Virginia Tech. It's Bo Bassett's brother, adopted brother, I believe. So that was a big win for Robidoux. That a lot of the pundits going into that match were like, "Ooh, this will be a competitive match. Who's going to win?" And Robidoux honestly just sort of ran right through him. So Landon Robidoux going to be representing the United States at the U20 World Championships, as is incoming freshman heavyweight Trayshawn Ross, who had a big comeback against Kobe Merrill, the brother of Cody Merrill. If you haven't seen Kobe Merrill, just Google him. He's an effing tank. Merrill actually beat him 11-0 pretty quickly it was a best of 3. Beat him 11-0 pretty quickly in that first match. Trayshawn comes back and wins the next 2 to secure his spot. Robidoux also going to wrestle at Final X for a true 3rd spot in the seniors. What else are we going to say? Oh, the U23 World Championships. Troy Spratley, Bennett Berge also won.
Muted you right on a minute. So
I had a couple more I wanted to
I don't know if you were completely done with that, but I think you did a great job. I feel sorry for anybody that was listening at 2x speed and then they had to go back and put it at 1x speed because you already are a fast talker.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
That's just a lot. So
I listen to podcasts at 2x speed, so I feel like when I'm on a podcast, I've got to talk fast too. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. We might keep that segment going for the remainder until wrestling season starts back up, and then I don't know. It's your show. You can do whatever you want. So
then I'll stretch the legs again whenever it's November or whatever.
There you go. Well, anybody that has been listening, we do appreciate you for joining us today for another episode of the Reload Podcast. We're coming up on episode 50 next week or the week after. So we appreciate you guys for hanging out with us for so many episodes. And if you would like, share, subscribe to show your support. If you would also go to your podcast app and rate us, review us, that also helps. And we absolutely appreciate that. We'll see you next time. Keep those pistols firing and remember to reload. Go Posts.